last week we talked about those methods that are not good because they may force the development of psychic powers, but they are not really working at the level of the soul, and therefore they are superficial, and also they are lost in the next incarnation, etc. And then Leadbeater goes on and he says, what then, it may be asked, are the desirable methods, since so many are undesirable? Broadly, those which, instead of suppressing the physical body by force, train the soul to control it. He's mentioning here, remember we said there are different ways of working on quieting the physical body, whether through manipulating the prana, through drugs, through physical exercises, etc. So instead of forcing the body to be quiet, he says those methods that train the soul to control the body are better, which are the methods in Raja Yoga. And he mentions again, whatever is obtained by this kind of methods, the Lokottara, is gained by the soul, by the true, man as the Manu, the thinker. This comes from the Sanskrit, are gained by the soul, and so is a permanent possession forevermore, carried over from one earthly life to another. Knowledge can be gained now where it has always been available, at the hands of those who are adepts in this great science of the soul, the fringe of which we are beginning to touch in our deepest studies. So he calls it the science of the soul, and he's going to talk about more of the development of these psychic and spiritual powers, which is a science, and we start touching the fringe of it in our deeper studies, but this knowledge is in the hands of the adepts, as he says, of the masters of wisdom, as I mentioned before. How can we reach them? You cannot reach them in the physical body, but they can reach you, and assuredly they will reach you when they see you to be fit for the work of helping the world. So in the Theosophical tradition, all this field of development, which is what Blavatsky would call the occult science, which has a lot of knowledge and information that we don't have, that is not in books, etc. When we are ready for that, because we can be of help, we can use it for service, the master will contact that person and tell the person how to train this aspect. But before that, there is all the work that we are doing in all these webinars. Until that work is over or close to be over, then in general, all these things or this aspect of the work of developing other powers is not really necessary. Again, in each person is different. There may be specific circumstances why this may be important in a person before other things are done. We can talk in absolutes here, but generally speaking, this is the idea. Now, the masters will never gratify mere curiosity. They will give no aid to the person who wishes to gain powers for himself alone. But when a person has shown by long and careful training and by using for helpfulness all the power that he already possesses, this is what we were doing this week, that his will is strong enough and his heart pure enough to bear his part in the divine work, then he may become conscious of their presence and their aid when he least expects it. So in the Theosophical view, the idea is, don't worry about this. This will come when it must. There is a lot of work that we have to do on setting these foundations, of using rightly what we already have, on purifying, on developing wisdom, and then that will come when it must. So he says, if you have this desire for higher sight, for example, to be able to see beyond what the eyes bring, make sure first of the mental and moral development lest you should succeed in your efforts and gain your powers, for to possess them without having first acquired those other qualifications would be indeed a curse and not a blessing, for you would misuse them, and your later state would indeed be worse than the earlier. So after having acquired certain powers and misused them, then we will be in a worse position than we were before developing those powers. But when the time comes, the methods that Leadbeater says that are the methods by which the soul is trained and not just the body is forced, are methods that have to do with meditation, basically. So what he says is that the first step necessary towards the attainment of the higher clairvoyance is concentration. Not to gaze at a bright spot until you have no mind left. Remember that he explained when we look at something continually, there is like a paralysis that begins to go into the brain from the nerves of the eyes, and then the brain is in a kind of hypnosis, and that again is working on the body, not on the power of the soul to control the body. So concentration, which is to acquire such control over your mind that you can do with it what you will and fix it exactly where you want to hold it for as long a period as you choose. This is not an easy task. It is one of the most difficult and arduous, but it can be done. So what he always proposed is that when the time comes, there is something you can do so that when the time comes, that can be accomplished. And it's developing your ability to meditate, to focus your mind, your ability to raise your consciousness beyond the mind. So this takes, years, perhaps a few incarnations to fully master. We don't know when we started. We may have studied, long ago, or we may be just starting now. It doesn't matter. But what he says is what you can do is to start, along with all the other work that we always talk about, start training yourself in this so that when the time comes, you have the ability to do those things that are needed to develop these other powers. So he says, for a long time you will find when you try to meditate that your thoughts are continually going off at a tangent, and you do not know it till suddenly you start to find how far away they have gone. You must not let this dishearten you, for it is the common experience. You must simply bring the errant mind back again to its duty, 100 or 1,000th time if necessary. So this is part of what the exercise that will be for this week, to try in this training our minds in a deep focused concentration. And Besant explains concentration is attention. If you pay attention to what you do during the day, your mind will be concentrated. Many sit down for meditation and wonder why they do not succeed. How can you suppose that half an hour of meditation and 23.5 hours of scattering of thought throughout the day and night will enable you to concentrate during that half hour? You haven't done during the day and night what you did in the morning. To become a yogi, you must be attentive all the time. So this training in concentration, it needs to go on during the day too, to try to live with mindfulness, with awareness. So these are things that are going to be part of the exercise today. So let us stop here. Thank you everybody for your participation, and we'll see you next week.